ተመልካቾቻችን እንደምን ሰንብታችኋል? እንግዲህ በዛሬ ፕሮግራማችን እንደተለመደው በዚህ ፕሮግራም ላይ ትልልቅ ሰዎችን በትልቅ ኃላፊነት ላይ ያሉ ሰዎችን ወደ ፕሮግራማችን እየጋበዝን ከልምዳቸው ከተሞክሯቸው ሁላችንም ብዙ መማር የምንችላቸው ሀሳቦች አሉ ብለን ስለምናምን ዛሬም ደግሞ እንደዚህ በስቱዲዮ አንድ ትልቅ የቢዝነስ ሊደር ጋብዤላችኋለሁ። አቶ ምናሴ ታደሰ እንኳን ወደ ሄለን ሾው በደህና መጣ። አቶ ምናሴ መርህ ያለው ባለራዕይ ቪዥነሪ ሊደር ማለት ነው አይደለ? ግሎባሊ ሪኮግናይዝድ የቢዝነስ ኤግዜኪቲቭ ቢዝነስ ሊደር ቦርድ የተለያዩ ቦርዶች ውስጥ ሰርቭ በማድረግ የሚያገለግል እንግዲህ C-suite ኤግዜኪቲቭስ ይሏቸዋል እዚህ ሀገርና በጣም በትልቅ ኃላፊነት ለብዙ አመታት ፋይዘር የሚባለው ፋርማሲውቲካል ካምፓኒ ከ22 አመታት በላይ as a leader በተለያየ ኃላፊነት ውስጥ ሰርተሃል። እንግዲህ ፋይዘር 100,000 በላይ ኤምፕሎይዎች አሉት። over the 22 years እዛ በሰራህበት ጊዜ top 270 leadership እዛ ላይ ደርሰ ነበር እንደውም ከመቀየርህ በፊት አይደለ? የሌላ ዲቪዥን ውስጥ ከመግባት በፊት እና የተለያዩ global chair for Pfizer Global Blacks Council as a member, Pfizer Diversity Worldwide Leadership Committee, also Pfizer Senior Leadership Council ቅድም እንዳልኩት top 270 በጣም impressive የሆነ accomplishment ነው። ከዛ በኋላ ደግሞ president ሆነ አዲስ division ማለት ይቻላል Vertas is a new division Viatris አዲስ ኩባንያ በደንብ ተገልጽልናለህና እንግዲህ የ$3 billion business ነው across 4 major therapeutic areas ይላል። ወደ 3500 ሰራተኞች ያሉበት emerging market president ሆነ ሰርተሃል። አሁን እንግዲህ ያለህበት ሮል partner እና advisor EMIR did I say right?
You did.
EMIR Group እንደዚሁም ደግሞ የተለያዩ ቦርድ non-profit እና corporate board including Medexus አይደል? listed at Toronto Stock Exchange, chairman of audit committee, Eva Pharma board advisor, BCIU member of board እና the Sparkle Foundation board chairman. እንግዲህ በዚህ ኃላፊነት ላይ ትልቅ እውቅና ትልቅ ሽልማቶች አግኝተሃል። አንደርግራጁዌት ዲግሪህን የሰራኸው ቨርጂኒያ ቴክ ነው እዚህ ቨርጂኒያ፣ MBA ፔን ስቴት እንደዚሁም ደግሞ ኮሎምቢያ በኋላ በደንብ ትነግረናለህ EPM ኮሎምቢያ ቢዝነስ ስኩል። እንኳን ደህና መጣ። በጣም ደስ ብሎኛል ይሄንን ጊዜ ካንተ ጋር ለማሳለፍ በመቻሌ። እንዳልኩ ብዙ ወጣቶች ፕሮግራማችንን ይከታተላሉ። እንዳንተ አይነት ትልቅ ሊደርሺፕ በኮርፖሬት አሜሪካ እንግዲህ ፋይዘር ፎርቹን 100 ከሚባሉት ድርጅቶች ውስጥ አንዱ ነው እና በትልቅ ኃላፊነት ላይ ከዛ ቦታ ላይ ስትደርስ ያለፍክባቸው ብዙ ልምዶች አሉ አይደለ? ብዙ ኤክስፒሪየንስስ አሉና ከነሱ ፈቃደኛ ሆነ ልምድን ስለምታካፍለን እዚህ ድረስ ከዱባይ ውስጥ ነው የምትኖረው ስለመጣ በጣም አድርጌ አመሰግናለሁ ምናሴ።
እኔም በጣም አመሰግናለሁ አለን ይሄንን ኦፖርቹኒቲ ስለሰጠሽኝ በጣም አመሰግናለሁ። አንቺም ምን የመሰለ ስራ እየሰራሽ ስለሆነ it's a perfect opportunity for me as well, so thank you very much.
በደስታ እስቲ ወደ ኋላ ልመልስህ። እንግዲህ አንድ ሰው በቫኪዩም አይደለም እንደዚህ አይነት ትልቅ ቦታ የሚደርሰው። አስተዳደግ ብዙ ጊዜ የመጣበት ብዙ አስተዋጽኦ አለውና can you take us back earlier ስንበልና እስቲ የት ነው ያደግከው? ቤተሰብህ እንዴት ነበረ? ምናሴ የሚያደርገው ምንድነው? እስቲ ከዛን ጀምር።
በጣም ጥሩ። እንዳልኩሽ ከመጀመራችን በፊት በተቻለው ያህል በአማርኛ ለማውራት ሞክራለሁ፣ ግን አማርኛም በቂ ስላልሆነ አንዳንድ ጊዜ እንግሊዝኛ መቀላቀል ይኖርብኛል።
ችግር የለም አንቀየም። ስንት አመት ነው ከኢትዮጵያ ከወጣህ? እንግዲህ ማአት አመት
43 አመት ልበለው። ከዛም 54 አመቴ ነው 11 አመቴ ነው እዚህ ስመጣ። ስለዚህ if my math is right 43 አመት ሆነኛል።
ልክ ነው። ስለዚህ ችግር የለም
እሞክራለሁ የምችለውን ያህል። so ያው ኢትዮጵያ ተወልጄ በ11 አመቴ እዚህ መጣን። ኢትዮጵያ ምን ሰራ ብትይ ኳስ መጫወት ከመጀመሪያውኑ like any other boy that I knew in my neighborhood ተማሪ ቤት የኔ ያህል ፍላጎትም አልነበረኝም። ሂሳብ የሚባል ነገር ደስ ይለኛል፣ የተቀረው በሙሉ ደስ አይለኝም። so መገረፍና መቆጣት ነው because ትልቅ እህትና ወንድሞቼ ደግሞ አንደኛ ሁለተኛ የሚወጡ ናቸው ሁሉ ጊዜ ስለዚህ ሪፖርት ጋር ሲመጣ እኔ ላይ ችግር አለ እነሱ ላይ lots of examples of what to be ነበረ ግን አንዱ ትልቁ ነገር ከአቴ ጋራ ከናቴ ጋራ I'm a bit of a mama's boy as they say ታሪክና ወሬ በጣም ሰማ ነበረ and so in a vacuum አልደረስኩም ስትይ you're absolutely correct እናቴ could tell a story about a million things but the thing that stuck with me was how great we are as a people what we come from so ማንነታችንን እንድናቅ ይሄ expectation building ለዋለው ይሄን አርግ ያን አርግ ሳይሆን almost an expectation that began to be implanted in my head and if I give you one specific example Ate was a normal size man much shorter than me አልነበረም ከሀገር ቤት ሲመጣ ሁሉ ጊዜ ሸሚዙን አንስቶ እንዲያሳየኝ እንትን ትለዋለች ምንድነው የሚያሳየኝ ብትይ ጣሊያኖቹ ሲመጡ የተተኮሰበት ጥይት ሆዱ ላይ እንዳለ I go back to this type of example and ይሄን አይነት እንትን because እነሱ አይነት ነገሮች before there was Netflix and before there were movies I was hearing about our history የኛ history and እኔ I'm a Pan-Africanist in a lot of ways so የኛ ስል we as Africans in general beyond the borders that we've defined for ourselves ብዬ ነው እንትን ብለው
ልክ ነው በጣም
ከዛ አልፎ ተርፎ አሜሪካ ነገር ትመጫለሽ you acclimate like any other family a little bit of discussion we were just having and my parents እናትና አባቶቼ እንግሊዝኛ ተማሩ እና ተማሩ ነው የተባልነው and so soon as a given it wasn't even a choice was it eventually I ended up at Virginia Tech የተማሪ ቤት አቅጣጫዬ was not straightforward again my older siblings are very very intelligent my younger sister very very intelligent I'd say I don't even እንደነሱ straightforward የሆነ path አይደለም but somehow some way Virginia Tech I started to wake up about school work ethic ስራ ማክበር ደህና ነገር ለመስራት መሞከር was always there it was just
ትልቅ ተስፋ ይሰጣል ለመሰላ ቋርጥ አይደለም ብዙ ጊዜ አንዳንዴ ወላጆች የሚያተኩሩት ምን አመጣ ያመጣ ቢያመጣ ላይ ፎከስ ሲደረግ የያንዳንዱ ልጅ ባህሪ የያንዳንዱ ልጅ ተስጦ ሳናቀው ልጆቹ አንዳንዴ በቃ ስታግናንት ሆነው ይቀራሉ ግን ቤተሰብ ስላመነብህ ይመስለኛል ግን እንደ ወንድምህ እንደ እህትህ አይደለህም አልተባልክም የምናሴ ጀርኒ ይሄ ነው ተብለህ ነው ማለት ነው
ተገረፍ ያለው
ተቆጣ
እንደነሱ ሞክር ምናምን ተብያለሁ ብቻ እሱ was not exclusive there was always expectations about what I was going to be and who we come from and those types of things so እኔ በበኩሌ አሁን ሶስት ልጆች አሉኝ expectations is the thing I preach right so ምን ማለት ነው እሱ አንድን ሰው ይሄን ሁን ያን ሁን ብለን especially with this generation you cannot but hopefully plant የምታደርጊው seed plant የምታደርጊው ደህና ነገር እንዲበቃ is the examples and when you and I were talking about this you know in a conversation ለምን እንያዝ ስንል it's examples that people need ለኔ one of the most important inflection points the example ታላቅ ወንድሜ ነበር at some point when I started to wake up and mature a little bit አይደለ እሱን ሳየው የሱን work ethic የሱ discipline የሱ commitment ሳየው those are the things that I learned that ultimately turned on the desire in desire እንትን ማለት right እውቀት አይደለም it has nothing to do with IQ it has nothing to do with intelligence but አንድን ነገር በደንብ አድርገሽ disciplined ሆነሽ committed ሆነሽ ካልሰራሽው it's not going to work out and my focus was not there for whatever reason. I cannot say why.
So Virginia Tech ስትገባ
actually Virginia Tech ስገባ ብዙ አበሾችም አገኘሁኝ አማርኛዬም ትንሽ ተሻሻለ አሁን እንደዚህ ትንሽ ለማውራት እንድችል እና የትምህርት አቅጣጫ መያዝ ጀመረ ግን more important than almost anything else ማንነቴን በ11 ዓመቴ ስመጣ almost like any other African child you're mature you've taken some responsibility so those lessons okay to me are the most important lessons that I've learned education wise I don't know methods approaches things of that nature አጠናሁኝ እንጂ the rooting the foundation is in this Abisha culture that I grew up in to begin with.
Degree ምንድን ነበረ?
Degree economics and accounting as an undergrad. And then I went on to do a little bit of work and get an MBA in finance.
Pharmaceutical industry ውስጥ የመግባት ዓላማ ኖረው ነው ፕሮጀክት እንዴት so tell me እንዴት how did you end up there?
ምንም እሱ ፕላን አልነበረኝም and in 1995 MBA ጀሳተና the rave was technology companies technology so and technology was hardware Hewlett Packard Dell those type of companies or an Intel microprocessors so እነሱ ጋር ነው በመጀመሪያ apply ያደረኩት አንድ classmate Pfizer internship ሰርቶ እሱም pharmacy background አልነበረውም this is a great company እና ለምን አትሞክረውም ብሎ ጠየቀኝ ኢንተርቪው ሄድኩኝ job offer ሰጡኝ an important decision at that point as well Helen Hewlett Packard had offered me a job I loved Hewlett Packard's story Hewlett Packard was in San Francisco 5-6 hours away from my mother the job Pfizer is in New York 3 ሰዓት ከዲሲ if you ask me ለምንድን ነው decide ያደረገው just to be a little closer to እናቴ plain and simple
okay so እናት እዚህ ነበር Virginia
እዚህ ነበረች right eventually I would learn the pharmaceutical industry and become passionate about the pharmaceutical industry there's nothing not to like about helping people but the decision between two great companies and two great job offers at the time was nothing more than I want to be closer to my mom. I'm a mama's boy. I used to speak to my mom.
She was a dynamic set and I had the pleasure of knowing your mom. She was a dynamic እናት ነበሩ.
So that was the decision and how I got to Pfizer.
ተመልካቾቻችን እንግዲህ አጠር ያለች ረፍት ወስደን እንመለሳለን ከኛ ጋር ቆዩ ተመልካቾቻችን ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል ከአቶ ምናሴ ታደሰ ጋር የምናደርገውን ቆይታ እየቀጠልን ነው እንግዲህ ፋይዘር ቅድም እንዳልነው በጣም ትልቅ ኩባንያ ነው ከ100,000 በላይ ኤምፕሎይዝ አለበት እዛ ከደረስክ በኋላ ለ20 ዓመታት እንግዲህ ካንድ ኃላፊነት ወደ አንድ ኃላፊነት ካንድ ዲቪዥን ወደ አንድ ዲቪዥን እየተዘዋወርክ ራስን በጣም እያሳደግክ ነው የሄድክበትና ኮች ነበረ ሜንቶር የሚያደርጉ ሰዎች ነበሩ እንግዲህ የተለያዩ ጥሩ ውሳኔዎች መወሰን በመቻልህ ነው የደረስክበት ቦታ የደረስከውና እስቲ ስለዛ ትራጀክተሪ ምን የምትነግረን ነገር አለ
like anybody else I've made many mistakes and probably could have done things a little bit differently but the reality is ሁልጊዜ በእንግሊዝኛ የምለው ነገር ነው ወጣት ሰዎች ከኔ advice የሚወስዱ ሰዎች ሲጠይቁኝ I talk about the 3 C's አንድ ነገር courage because the workplace requires courage and what do I mean by that a lot of people talk about what do you mean in a workplace what courage do you need እኔ ስለራሴ አምኜ እኔ የሚያስፈልገኝን adviceም ሆነ some constructive criticism ሆነ some additional education ሆነ ራሴ አምኜበት ስለራሴ betting on myself እንትን ሳልል ሌላ ሰውን ጠብቄ advance አደርጋለሁ ብዬ እንትን አልልም that's one of the keys to my success and we're going to finish the diversity now, because of what's going on in the world today, and especially in America. Right? The fact of the matter is, at every stop, I can tell you, I was probably the only black person in the room, and the only black person that was a director. And then the only black person that was a senior director. And I remember this Jamaican woman, her and I became kind of the tag team of she's black, I'm black, we're going to get to the vice president level. Yeah, discourage እንዳያደርገኝ unfair no be quit እንዳደርግ those things don't come into mind. But the one thing that was critical to me was to be able to have the courage to navigate my own course. And I took lots and lots of risks in order to be able to get to the position I got to. Right? I was responsible for all of Europe from a treasury function. A job opened up that would give me different exposure to South Africa. Right? Again, I'm going to speak about it in very blunt terms. If I was on French with an English accent or French, I wouldn't have to go different places around the world in order to prove myself. Okay? But I took the opportunity, asked my wife, moved my entire family to South Africa to take an assignment that was going to prove I could be a CFO of a small business so that I get the responsibility to be the CFO of a much bigger business. Right? I remember everybody asking me, you have a nice job. It's in Treasury. This was an expanded job, but in a smaller business. Why would you go all the way there? You're going to be forgotten there.
ማን ያስታውሳል?
ለምንድን ነው የሄድኩት? Because experience I knew would help me catapult the trajectory of my career. Right? So እንደዚህ አይነት ነገሮች
strategic ናቸው አስበህበት ነው
100%. Right? And so the courage to be able to bet on yourself ስልሽ ሌላ ሰው ፕሮሞት ያርገኝ HR has a plan and you do this and you do that ምናምን ብዬ በጠብቅ ኖሮ I would still be a director at Pfizer. Right? ሁሌም in my mind ይሄ ደግሞ ከየት ነው የመጣው ብትይ ወይዘሮ አበበች ያሳደገቻቸው ልጆች ሂዱና አሸንፉ ተብለን ነው እንትን የተባለው እኔ የሰማሁት እሱን ነው. So at every point, no matter whether I was doing the right thing or making mistakes, and I made plenty, that idea of moving up, taking on more responsibility, being courageous about what I wanted, demanding what I wanted. Right?
Demand ማለት እስቲ ንገረኝ።
Demand ማለት
አንዳንዴ እንፈራለን። ይሄ እድል ላይ ሰጠኝ ይችላል ገፍቼ ከመጣው የሚባል ነገር ማለት ነው። እሺ
በደንብ so እነዚህ አይነት responsibilities ከወሰድኩኝ በኋላ ከጓደኞቼ ጋር ሁሉ ጊዜ ማወራ ነው አበሾች አንዳንድ ጊዜ ይሉንታ ያጠቃናል። እኔ ደግሞ for whatever reason እንትኑን ሪስፖንሲቢሊቲውና ሮሉን ኮምፐንሴሽኑን ዝም ብሎ ስለማይሰጥ the reality is we know it. Guess what? All of us that are black and brown make less money than white men for the same job. I would go and advocate all the time. Now I want to be very clear. Okay? You have to do the work.
ስራው መስራት አለበት.
You have to demonstrate the capabilities. Okay? You cannot be naive about the fact that politics exists in an organization. Right? ስራውን ሰርቼ okay? Commitmentቱን አሳይቼ ከዛ በኋላ ግን ሄጄ አንኳኩቼ I want this promotion. I want this next job ማለቱ for me it was my right. Again, if I'm not going to bet on myself, if I'm not going to demonstrate the courage I'm talking about, ሌላ ሰው መጥቶ አንስቶ አንጠልጥሎ እዛ ቦታ አይጥለኛል አይጥለኝም. Right? That happens. That happens, unfortunately, not to people that look like me and you. It happens to other people. And again, I had to fight my way there. So the courage piece is important. Right? ሁለተኛው is the commitment. The commitment is discipline. The commitment is I'm going to outwork everybody. The commitment is I'm going to seek the help. And early on, I didn't, Helen. Right? So again,
ተማርክ እርዳታን
አለመጠየቅ በቃ ሰርቼ ነው ማገኘው የሚባል ነገር ጭንቅላቴ ውስጥ ነበረ. But the reality is in any organization your work doesn't speak for itself.
ይሄ ለኛ በሾሽ ከባድ ነገር ነው አንደርስታንድ ማድረግ
ምንድነው ምልሽ መሰለሽ once I figured out the decisions are made in rooms when I'm not going to be there.
Okay? Point.
When the decisions about me are going to be made in rooms when I'm not going to be there, it was actually extremely important for me to spread my wings. The fact of the matter is to go and network, to be able to expand your network. There were people that were mentors, that were advocates, there were people that took a liking to me because of my work ethic and my output. Right? ብዙ ሰርቻለሁ ብቻ አይደለም ደግሞ things that make a difference, things that will help drive decisions, insights that other people don't have. Okay? You know, 1 + 1 = 2, everybody knows that. You've got to be able to do some of the work, but then you've got to be able to come up and spread your wings. And when I eventually figured that out, that ability to be able to spread the wing was extremely important. And to me, not only did that help me catapult my career, when I was in the position to be able to make some of those decisions, I started to use that as well. So that's an important example. በአስተዳደጌ and በተፈጥሮዬ ያልነበረ ነገር ነው ግን I had to push myself to be able to say, you know what, that commitment is there, the work is there. They will do the work. They'll make sure they'll go the extra mile. But don't expect somebody to just come and pick you up and take you over there. So advocate for yourself when you expect others to be able to advocate for you as well.
ትልቅ ነገር ነው እንግዲህ ቪያትረስ እንግዲህ 3500 ሰዎችን ነበር የምታስተዳድረው እዛ ከ125 ማርኬት ያለበት ነው it's not a small feat ትልቅ ኃላፊነት ነው እንዴት አርገህ ነው እንደዚህ አይነት ኮምፕሌክስ የሆኑ ኦፐሬሽንና ኃላፊነትን as a leader navigate የምታረገው እንዴት ነበር ጫና አለው stressful ነው ብዙ ኃላፊነት ነው እንዴት ነው እነዚህን ኮምፕሌክስ responsibility manager የምታረገው አንተ
over the 20 years እያደኩኝ እየተማርኩኝ fail እያረኩኝ grow እያረኩኝ as I የደረስኩት again with some of these simple human principles as I talked to you about undo the other C by the way is character and that is knowing yourself and being true to who you are and being principled. Sometimes people will say
ምሳሌ ላይ ምን ይመስላል እሱ
ምሳሌ ላይ ምን ይመስላል መሰለሽ if something is going on አንቺ ባንቺ principle ባንቺ አስተዳደግ ባንቺ value system የማይሆን ነገር I hear a lot of people say oh the boss is doing it I'm going to do it. I'm not doing that. Right? ምንድነው ማለት ነው 3500 ሰው ላይ ከኔ ሪፖርት ያደረገ across 125 markets, just to give you a sense, is all of Latin America, all of Africa, Middle East, all of non-EU Europe, and all of emerging Asia.
ማለት ነው
huge responsibility. አንድ ቀን ሰው ላይ ጮሃል ብትኝ አልጮህም. Have I seen that happen? It's happened many times. Has anybody ever screamed at me? No. Because I have my boundaries. Right?
ከመስመር አታሳልፍም
አላሳልፍም ምንድነው እንትን መባል ሰው አይደለሁም ደግሞ you know you're not going to come
አትገፋኝም ነው
አትገፋኝም you're not going to encroach on my space. Right? There's a limit. Work is work. Right? But me as a human being, the minimal amount of respect I'm going to give you, you're going to have to give back to me. That's not to say, right, that a boss has not told me you need to do that better or you need to improve this. That's not that. But as a human being, ስራ ቦታ ላይ ሄደን adults ላይ እንጮሃለን ማለት ስንት ጊዜ ያየው ነገር ነው Pfizer is a great organization ግን አይጮሃለሁ I will never ever do that. I never ever did that in the 24 years that I worked between Pfizer and Viatris and the many other years I worked in other companies. የማይሆን ነገር ነው, right? የማያስፈልግ ነገር ነው. And so
ፓወርህን በሱ አይደለም የምትገልጸው ኃይልህን በሱ አይደለም
አይደለም. Okay? So the Viatris journey goes something like this in short. I was in a division at Pfizer that was being sold off and combined with another company we created Viatris. And Viatris, by the way, 35,000 people. I'm part of the Viatris leadership team, the top 22 people. Okay? The second, it's the second largest business Makedonian. Right? And so in the midst of COVID, this transaction happens, this merger happens. So as a leader, right, I have a principle that I follow. your leader responsibility is to be able to shape the direction of where we're headed. Right? 3,500 people, 3,500 ሰው cannot know what's in my mind. And it's not about me, by the way. It's about the input of the entire leadership team so that we know and we build a roadmap of where we're headed. Right? That may sound simple. Oh, you make pharmaceutical products, you sell pharmaceutical products. It's not that simple. Right? What do we want to do? The አራት therapeutic area ያልኩሽ ብዙ ፕሮዳክቶች አሉ ብዙ ነገር ትሪት የሚያደርጉ. Right? If you don't focus and figure out what you're not going to do, you also cannot be a jack of all trades. That's my personal belief. You cannot be excellent at everything. ሁሉን ነገር እችላለሁ የሚል ሰው ይመስለንም. Right? So the country manager in Brazil, the country manager in Thailand, every day የደወሉ ምን እንስራ እንዲሉኝ አይደለም. አቅጣጫችን የት ነው የሚባለው ነው. So the most important thing amidst COVID, as opposed to bringing people together, to be able to get enough inputs. Think about a merger that's happening between two companies and different people are coming. So what you meet ሳላረጋቸው በቪዲዮ በዙም እየኖርን
oh my gosh,
to be able to build trust and confidence and then be able to set direction for the business is probably one of the biggest tests that I had. But again, I go back to if you're courageous enough to make decisions, you have the commitment that you're going to demonstrate as a leader to your team. Right? እነሱ መጠበቅ ብቻ አይደለም. አንቺም ራስሽ I'm part of the team and I'm going to do የሚባል ነገር አለ. And then the character to be able to say, this guy, if we do this and we do that, he's going to treat us fairly and as human beings, goes a tremendous way to being able to engage people. And that's what I've practiced and that's what I'd encourage people to do. But leaders, it's when there's change, there's a merger, there's a pandemic. ብዙ ነገር አለ. ወደዚህ ነው የምንሄደው so that people are not going in all sorts of different directions is absolutely paramount. በጣም ያስፈልግ ነገር ነው.
principled የሚባለው እዚህ ላይ ነው ማለት ነው.
እሱ ላይ ነው.
እስቲ አጠር ያለች ረፍት ደግሞ ወስደን ስንመለስ ስለ DEI እንነጋገራለን. diversity, equity and inclusion, right? ረፍት ወስደን ስንመለስ እንነጋገራለን. ከኛ ጋር ቆዩ. ተመልካቾቻችን ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል። እንግዲህ አሁን የምጠይቅ ጥያቄ በተለይ አሁን አሜሪካን ሀገር ባለው አዲስ አድሚኒስትሬሽን ባለው ፕሬዚደንት ዶናልድ ትራምፕ ብዙ ካመጣቸው ለውጦች ውስጥ አንዱ በጣም ትልቁ ቦታ የመጀመሪያው ነገር DEI እዚህ ሀገር it's almost became እኔ መስማት ሁሉ እስኪለኝ ድረስ እዚህ ሀገር diversity, equity and inclusion አንደኛ እሱ ምን እንደሆነ ለምን ባንተ በኩል በስራ ጋር አያይዘ እንድትነግረን ፈልጋለሁ። ግን አንተ ጥቁር እንደመሆነ as a black executive ቅድም ብለኛል እኔና አንድ ጀሜይካን ነበርን በተለያዩ ኃላፊነት ውስጥ የነበርን ጥቁሮች ማለት ነው አይደለና ስለዚህ ትልቅ ስራ ሰርተሃል Pfizer's Global Black Councils እና DEI ኢኒሺቲቫቸው ውስጥ ለምንድነው ይሄንን ቦታ ላይ cuz you could just ኤግዜኪቲቭ ሆነ ዝም ብለ መስራት ትችላለ ሌሎች በር ከፍታለው ግን በዚህ ቀጥላለው ማለት ትችል ነበር ግን እዛ ላይ ብዙ ኢምፓክት ያለው ስራን ሰርተሃልና why was that important to you DEI ላንተ ማለት ይሄ ማለት ምን ማለት ነው
ልክ እንዳልሽው ነው ይሄ ስራ ያልነበረም I have a job this is additional activity and by the way ብዙ ሰው when I stepped up to say I'm going to do this and I'm going to help ብዙ ሰው እኛም ባህል ላይ ያለ ነው and a marginalized groups ያለ ነገር ነው oh don't put yourself in harm's way አንተን ሊያጠቃ ይችላል ምናምን again I go back to what I told you right and I don't want to sound like I'm full of myself but I have confidence in me so አንድ ቦታ ተቀጥሬ ዝም ብዬ ለሰማ አይደለም I'm there to have an impact I'm there to make an improvement I'm there to right wrongs that I think need to be addressed okay so if Pfizer story summarized about ago Pfizer had operations in Pfizer South Africa for 50 plus years before I got there in those 50 plus years you had never had a country manager meaning the top job in Pfizer South Africa of a black man
you and የመጀመሪያው ነህ
እኔ የመጀመሪያው ነኝ ከዛ በኋላ local South African years later Africa Middle East የኔ responsibility ሲሆን ቀጥር ያለው
እሺ
right Pfizer Brazil for many years did not have women as directors forget about country manager right we've had multiple country managers. I've left multiple female country managers in Brazil, which is a big operation, $1 billion operation. Helen, ይሄ ነገር ለምን ይሆናል ብለን critically መጠየቅ አለብን. Right? And sometimes because the White House said so or because some talking head said so, ሁላችንም distracted የሆነን ነው. But critically ብናስብበት, the fact is, as data shows, women are underrepresented in leadership roles. ምንድን ነው ብትይኝ, there are more men named John, you can look it up right now, that are Fortune 500 CEOs than there are women that are Fortune 500 CEOs. Is there something magical about the name John? Right? ምንድን ነው about John? Nothing at all. And so you will hear people say, oh, no, DEI is disadvantaging people. It should be a merit-based system. There is no meritocracy. I'm sorry about that. If there was a meritocracy, half of the population are females. You'd have much more female representation. A good percentage of the population in the United States is African American, Hispanic American, Asian American. You would see more of those groups represented. Right?
ኃላፊነት ያለበት ቦታ.
In the hiring, to begin with, ሁላችንም ስንገባ, okay, እኩል ነው. The percentages are relatively proportional. Right? Again, as people start to rise, you see a difference. Right? And again, you'll hear lots of people, including the White House today, say, oh, it's a merit-based system. No, it's not. ለምንድን ነው እሱን የምለው? Right? I see people on the basis of potential. Potential ለኔና ላንቺ could be very different than the next guy. Right? If all of us went through the same rigorous process, the same interview, ሁላችንም ያለፍንበት ከሆነ ከዛ በኋላ all of a sudden a year, 2 years in, ይሄንኛው potential አለ የለውም የሚባለው is deceiving people. Right? From my experience, the guy that I hired in Pfizer South Africa to be the first South African black has done exceptionally well. Okay. The many women I've taken a chance to be able to hire have done exceptionally well. በያሉበት ቦታ. The only difference, opportunity አይሰጣቸውም የሚባለው ነው. Right? That is one important thing. So for me, when Pfizer started to say, as maybe your viewers know and lots of people in America will know, you would have what are called affinity groups. So ተሰባስቦ, to share difficulties because there's few of us in these corporate settings. Right? Like I said, many meetings I went to, I'd be the only black person in the room. Initially, you look around and say, oh my God, there's nobody else that looks like me. But eventually you start to figure out, you got to step up and you got to speak the truth. You have to have the courage to be present. You have to have the courage to be able to say, I'm here and my opinion matters. I can just sit there and just be silent. So it was an opportunity to develop a strategic approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Right? It worked for a period of time. I hope they're still doing it. But I can tell you, my conscience is clear, right? Given the commitment and the character that I have, that I tried to make it better than I found it. አሻሽዬው ነው የወጣሁት ብዬ definitely believe አደርጋለሁ።
እኔ ብዙ ጊዜ ስለ ዳይቨርሲቲ ኤኩዊቲ ኤንድ ኢንክሉዥን ስንነጋገር በእኛ ህብረተሰብ መካከል እንደኔ አይነት ኢትዮጵያ እንግዲህ እስከ 17 ዓመት ያድጌ እዚህ ሀገር ስመጣ ስለ ቀለም ያለኝ አመለካከት እኔ ኳበሻ ነኝ የሚል በአብዛኝ አንዳንድ ሰው እንደውም ችግር አለበት ራሱን እኔ ጥቁር ነኝ ማለት እንኳን የሚቸገር ሰው አለ። the reality ግን ወደንም ጠላንም አሜሪካን ሀገር ጥቁሮች ነን። ወደንም ጠላንም በተለያየ ሴቲንግ ውስጥ ዳይቨርሲቲ ኢኩዊቲ እና ኢንክሉዥን እኛን የሚነካ ነገር ነውና ይሄ እኔ በቃ ዝም ብላችሁ ጥቁር አትበሉ ዝም ብላችሁ ስሩ ለሚለው ሰው ምንድነው ምንለው? ምክንያቱም ይሄ ነገር ባያስፈልግ ኖሮ okay, the civil rights movement ባያስፈልግ ኖሮ እዚህ ሀገር አይፈጠርም ነበር። ስለሌለ እድሉ ስላልነበረ ነው አይደለ? ለዛ ህዝብም ለሚለው ምን ትላል? እኛን አበዛችሁት በቃ ጥቁር አትበሉ ሁሉ ሰው በራሱ በስራው በማንነቱ በችሎታው ይቀጠር የሚሉትን ሰዎች ምን ትላለ?
ይቀጣ ታርገልኛለሽ እዚህ ላይ ትንሽ ሳቅ ያልኩኝ እንትን ልበለው number one actually I'm a Pan-Africanist. There's nothing more, again, with this injection Ababis Gabriel Selassie and lots of people gave. በዚህ በጥቁርነቴ ምንም ትሬድ ማላረገው በጣም የምደሰተው proudly ማረገው ነገር ነው number 1 number 2 unfortunately ብዙ ሰው እንደዚህ አይነት ነገር የሚለው historyያችንን ስለማናቅ and most importantly the history of the United States ስለማናቅ ነው okay
ልክ ነው
so እነዚህ ሰዎች ለስንት ዓመት ሰርተው enslaved ሆነው ከዛ በኋላ ፍሪ ሆናችሁ ሲባሉ ስንት ዓመት ሰርተሽ በልውጡና ራሳችሁን ቻሉ የተባሉ ሰዎች ናቸው አስቡበት you worked your grandfather worked your father worked your grandmother worked for years unpaid አንድ ቀን በልውጡና ራሳችሁን ቻሉ ተባሉ okay የራሳችንን history ብናቅ ዶሮ ደሞ as Ethiopians and as Africans in general አበሾች in general what happened in Patrice Lumumba in Nyerere in Haile Selassie ራሳችንን እንችላለን ሲሉ ስንትና ስንት ነገር ነው እነሱ ላይ እንትን ያለው so አሁን አይደለሁም ምናምን የሚባል ነገር እውነቱን ለመናገር ይቅርታ አድርጉልኝ in this one opinion really irritates me because you don't know the history
you and me both
and at the end of the day if you believe that white men are the ones that are privileged to lead organizations that's up to you but from my perspective okay any ያደኩበት again going back to the history አበበች ገብረስላሴ was working she አምስት ልጅ ያሳደገች ብዙ ሀገር ሄዳ የምትሰራ ነበረች አቶ ማሞ ታደሰ had no issues with that because she was a qualified woman that was doing that I know many women that are doing fantastic things I don't want to go back and my wife does fantastic things and when I'm needed to support and to follow I support and I follow but this backward sort of mentality that ወንድ እዚህ ነው ሴት እዚህ ናት ነጭ እዚህ ነው ጥቁር እዚህ ነው ምናምን የሚባል ነገር we need to stop that but why do you need DE&I because the fact of the matter is the decisions are being held the power is being held in a small group that don't want to give it up
that's true
if you need any examples of incompetence of DEI see what's happening in the United States right now see what's happening in the White House right now and tell me is Sue competence no no and the only incompetence the only DEI እውነቱን ለመናገር ያየሁት ስንትና ስንት I sound like James Bond so I sound intelligent እንደሱ አይነት ሰዎች ከኔ አልፈው እንትን ሲባሉ ነው eventually I caught them but I caught them because of my own work I caught them because of my own commitment I caught them because of my own character okay
ለዚህ በራስ መተማመን ትልቅ ነገር ነው ይሄ ነገር ድና የማይደረግ ነገር ነው እናስበበት
ምናየው ነገር እንዳላየነው ልንሆን አንችልም እስቲ በቢዝነስም ላይ ውሳኔ ስትወስን your approach decision making ላይ እንዴት ነው በተለይ high stakes የሆነ እንደዚህ አይነት ትልቅ ኃላፊነት ቦታ ስትደርስ and I often wonder እንዴት አድርገው ነው when it's like when they have to make ያንተ decision ይሄን በቃ consequential በሚሆንበት ጊዜ በዚህ በኩል እንደዚህ decision ብትወስድ እንደዚህ ይመጣል በዚህ በኩል እንደዚህ የሚልና በትልቅ ሪስክ ያለው decision እንዴት ነው ያንተ ፕሮሰስ እንዴት ነው እሱን የምትወስነው to begin with especially for listeners that do this ሁሉ ጊዜ it's easy ሌላ ሰው decision ሲወስድ ይሄ ምንድነው አጠፋ ምናምን ይላል ሰው even if I don't agree with the decision that's been made ሁሉ ጊዜ I used to ask myself when I'm in that role what am I going to do so ብዙ ጊዜ practice አድርጌዋለሁ እነዚህ አይነት ነገሮች ከመረሳቸው በፊት right so when I tell you ለኔ it was a huge no that a woman leader did not rise to the director level forget about the country level at Brazil lene it was a huge issue when an African a South African was not a country manager in an organization that has existed for 60 years those things did not sit well with me አልተቀበልኳቸውም በተራዬን ጠብቄ የኔ ተራ ሲመጣ ምን አረጋለሁ ብዬ ነው ስጠባበቅ የነበረው so when that moment came those decisions were much easier so please practice those decisions easy to throw stones at somebody when the decision is being made now how do I make decisions first of all I know what I know and I'm a very inclusive leader so I take inputs I take inputs from people that know the decision rights may be mine but the information and the insights may be others And so
are you a team of rival ነገር የተለያየ ሐሳቦች ይዘው የሚቀርቡ ሰዎችን ነው የምታደርገው ወይስ እንዴት ነው?
ሁሉን አይነት especially the most quiet ones are the ones that I'm going to go seek a conversation with to be able to get that information, right? But I'm very clear to begin with, Helen. If the decision right is mine, the decision right is mine, right? But that input helps me to be able to make decisions. Number two, the anxiety that comes with making decisions because I may make the wrong decision.
ሁሌ ያለ ነገር ነው.
Right? As soon I am absolutely clear that I'm not going to make the right decision every single time, right? But then after that, to be totally honest, in my estimation, the decision, even if it's 70-80% right, it's the commitment to execute it. So the buy-in of everybody else that makes the difference. So in my team, I used to have a saying that I borrowed from a guy named Mike Gladstone, who I worked for, and I love this saying: 70% alignment, 100% commitment. 70% alignment. ምን ማለት ነው alignment በአማርኛ 70%
ሲገናኝ ማለት ነው አይደል? ሲያያዝ ነገሩ ሐሳቡ ሲያያዝ
ሲያያዝ perfect 100% commitment to the execution.
right? ያ እንግዲህ የሁሉንም ቲም ይጠይቃል።
የሁሉንም ከኔ ሚቲንግ ሲወጡ I don't want somebody to say ይሄ አያውቅም ምናምን የምትሉትን በሉት። right? አንድ ጊዜ ግን decision ከወሰድን በኋላ everybody's got to go and execute it. In my experience, when you get behind it, it doesn't mean you won't make mistakes. But 90% of the time you will succeed in being able to get to a point where you execute and gain what you need to gain, or at least gain the lessons to be able to course correct. But if you don't have the proper buy-in, if you don't have the proper sort of input, you don't create the sort of commitment that is necessary to be able to execute the plan, you end up wasting a lot of time. So I'm clear I'm not going to make the right decision every single time.
አንዳንድ ጊዜ ሰው I think በፍርሃት ይመስለኛል እድገትም የማይመጣው ለዚህ ነው አይደለ? ውሳኔ መወሰን ሰው እንዲህ ቢሆንስ በፍራቻ የውሳኔ ሰዎች ሳንሆን ስንቀር ያለንበት ቦታ ስታግነንት ሆነን እንቀራለን አይደል? ወይም አዲስ ነገርን አንሞክርም። ማደግም አይቻልም መሰለኝ አይደል? እንደዛ ሲሆን
እሱ again
it's different?
No, it's absolutely aligned. This word courage I keep using. I'm not going I live in Dubai, so Gaza ሄድና ቦምብ ሲጣል ቆም ማለት አይደለም. That courage, sorry for that example, that courage is in believing in yourself, right? For the longest time, what freed you to be able to demand? What freed you to be able to go and take assignments in South Africa when everybody said you'll be forgotten? What freed you to go into difficult situations you knew? When I went to the U.S. business, the U.S. business had to restructure. Part of my responsibility was to cut $1 billion of cost in a $3 billion business. You know what that means? I have to get rid of a lot of people, right? I understand that. And those are the most difficult decisions when you have to disrupt people's lives. People like myself, they have families. The decision has to be made, right? But you have to have the courage and the conviction in yourself, right? And I always felt, and hopefully this helps people, the confidence, the courage is to say, they hired me to be able to give my input and my insights. And if they don't want that, perfectly fine. There are plenty of other things I can do and plenty of other jobs I can intend, right? The other piece that's always given me confidence, Helen, እዚህ ስንመጣ አባቴ ታክሲ እየነዳ እኔ መክዳውንስ እየሰራሁኝ እህቴ መክዳውንስ እየሰራች ምንም ምግብ ጠረጴዛ ለማድረግ መክዳውንስ ሰርቼ እንትን እለዋለሁ. But it's important to me, if I'm hired, I have a role, I have a responsibility. Again, I have to show up. I have to be counted. I'm not a picture on the wall. You know, you have figureheads sometimes, especially in African-American sort of settings here. Just sit down and just be quiet so that it looks like we have a diverse team.
We have diversity.
Not with me.
The fake inclusion.
Not with me, right? I'm in the room, I'm going to have to speak. But when you start to say, I can go, and by the way, that is another important lesson, it's a job, it's not your life, right? It's a job. I know a job is important, but it's important as part of your life. In G, the job is not the life.
ጥሩ ሐሳብ አጠር ያለች ረፍት እንሰድና ደግሞ እንመለሳለን ሐሳባችንን እንቀጥላለን ተመልካቾቻችን ከረፍት ቆይታችን ተመልሰናል እንግዲህ በጣም ጥሩ ሐሳብ ምናሴ የተወክልን ያለው ወዳንተ ስቲል አምጣውን ስለ ስራ ስለ ቢዝነስ በደንብ ተጫውተናል ግን ምናሴን ምንድነው what's your why ከስራ ሌላ ቢዝነስ ሁሉ ነገር ስራ ነው ብለሃል ከስራ ውጪ ትልቁ ነገር ህይወት ነው ብለሃል እና ያንተ why ለምናሴ ምንድነው what's your why ቢባል ምንድነው
በጣም ጥሩ እኔ why the passion and the purpose in my life has always been really self-determination and an ability to be able to do what you please. So why do you say that? ምን ማለት ነው እሱ ያው again go back to the roots of it. የእናቴ ልጅ ነኝ I'm a mama's boy ብዬሻለሁ so from the earliest days understanding the types of things that she went through as a professional woman raising 5 kids in the 1970s and the 1980s migrating to the United States the things that I've seen happen those things have been absolutely instrumental and so you know I'm passionate about going to space or none of that human beings to be able to determine their own selves በጣም important ነገር ነው ለኔ and I actually think that it's rooted in the fundamentals of the way I was raised and the types of examples I have I have 3 kids እንዳልኩሽ 3 ልጆች አሉኝ እነሱንም አሁን it has nothing to do with my expectations for them or my demands of them my expectations is a different story my demands of them is really about developing ራሳቸውን የሚችሉ ሁለት ሴቶች አንድ ወንድ ራሳቸውን determine የሚያደርጉ people that are not going to back down from anything or anybody people that are going to stand up for what's right right ከዛ በኋላ you know what do you like what don't you like if life was fair and it's not if life was simple and straightforward probably እግር ኳስ ተጫውቼ ከልጅነቴ የምወደው ነገር እግር ኳስ ኮች አድርጌ እግር ኳስ
ላይፍ ያቆም ነበር
that would have been it but there are many other things that you need to do in order to really have an impact and where my calling is really about making sure people have a voice especially marginalized communities this is near and dear to my heart
okay ጠንካራ ሚስት አለች ጎበዝ very hard working በራሷ የራሷን ስራ እየሰራች ትልቅ ስራ እየሰራች ያለች ባለቤት አለ እንዳልኩ ቅድም ብለሃል 3 ልጆች አሉ 2 ሴቶች አንድ ወንድ ያንተ አይነት ስራ ከአንድ ሀገር ወደ አንድ ሀገር አይደለ ግሎባሊ ከሳውት አፍሪካ ወደ ዱባይ ከኒው ጀርሲ ወደዛ እያላችሁ ሀገር በጣም እየቀያየራችሁ ነውና ይሄ ግሎባል ኤክስፒሪየንስ ልጆችን እንዴት ያረገ ሼፕ ያደረጋቸው ነው አጀስትመንቱስ እንዴት አርገ ነው like it's very tough ከትምርት ታስወጣለ አዲስ ቤት አዲስ ላይፍ ትጀምራለ how do you እንዴት ነው ናቪጌት የምታደርጉት as a family ይሄንን እነዚህን አይነት ለውጦች
as a family ልክ እንዳልሽው እንደ ቤተሰብ ነው actually የመጀመሪያው አሳይመንታችን ሳውት አፍሪካ ነበረ የመጀመሪያው ጊዜ ሳውት አፍሪካ መሄድ ፈልጋለሁ በሚስቴን እንስላት no አንሄድም she was working at Merrill Lynch she said no and guess what that was the decision because it's not about የኔ ስራ ብቻ አይደለም ለሷም career ነበረ ከዛ ልጅ መውለድ ስንጀምር obviously ሷናት እንትን የምትለው ያኔ the second time South Africa እንሄዳለን አለን so to begin with these are family decisions ብዙ ሰው አቃለው you know ባሌ or ሚስቴ አትችልም I always say have you talked to the person have you made a plan it may not be the first time but you need to think about that and so again ለምንድን ያረከው ብትይኝ it's with a purpose in mind it's not just to go and go somewhere else I was trying to navigate my career to make decisions that would give me a leg up because I know I'm not going to be one of the chosen ones that gets picked up and transferred everywhere. I needed to bet on me, right? and some of those less risky moves for the corporation. Oh, we can just put him in South Africa. If South Africa fails, no big deal.
Okay.
Oh, he did exceptionally well in South Africa? Okay, let's give him Latin America. So, እንደሱ አይነት ነገሮች is a joint family decision, but I was doing it and I was explaining to my wife why we're doing it for the betterment of me, but for the betterment of my family. ልጆቹ እውነቱን ለመናገር they were younger when they moved. So they were not a big part of the decision, let's say.
ወደ ዱባይም ስትሄዱ ትንሾች ነበሩ?
ወደ ዱባይ ስንሄድ ሶስተኛና አራተኛ ክፍል ነበሩ ሴቶቹ። ትንሹ እዛ ነው የተወለደው። by the way የመጀመሪያ ልጃችን ኒውጀርሲ ነው የተወለደችው፣ ሁለተኛዋ ሳውት አፍሪካ ነው የተወለደችው፣ ይሄ ደግሞ ዱባይ ነው የተወለደው። so
definitely global family ነበር። okay
እና ለምንድን ነው አያቶቻችንን ትተን ካዝኖቻችንን ትተን አሉ? I understand that. So summertime ላይ አሜሪካ ነገር ይመጣሉ። ግን I firmly believe ያ ኤክስፒሪየንስ አሜሪካ ነገር ብቻ ማየት ሳይሆን አረብ ሀገርን ማየት, Dubai is a cosmopolitan city, to be able to hang out with Russians, Egyptians, Chinese, you name it, in addition to Americans and Canadians and others. በጣም develop አድርጓቸዋል ብዬ እገምታለሁ. But it is a family decision, and I encourage people, if you have an itch and if you have an opportunity, don't say no just because you don't want to have the conversation with the family. You can have the conversation with the family.
አንድ ላይ ውሳኔ ተወስናላችሁ.
You can marry those two decisions, yes.
ልክ ነው። እስቲ ወደ ኋላ ተመልሰህ ምናሴ ለወጣትነቴ ምክር ብሰጥ ለወጣት ምናሴ ምክር ብሰጥ አሁን ብዙ ወጣቶች ይመለከታሉ ብያለሁ። ያ ምክር ምንድነው ትላለህ? በስለ ህይወት ወይም ስለ ስራም አንድ ላይ ጨምረህ
ስለ ህይወት again I'll go back to the 3 C's. I really mean that. And bet on yourself. Have the principles and the values, this character piece, to never evade you. Hey, short-term gain because I saw somebody do it, and I always say monkey see, monkey do. ትልቅ ሰው ስራ ላይ ያለ አያጠፋም ማለት አይደለም. Because I used to think, oh, these people must have been fantastic.
ትክክለኛ ዲሲዥን የሚያደርጉ ሁሌ
እዛ ስትደርሺ ታያዋለሽ። ይሄ ነው እንዴት ያለሽ? የኔ አስተሳሰብ እሱ ነው። And that commitment,
ሰው ናቸው እነሱ።
ሰው ናቸው ልክ እንደኛ. They will make mistakes, they will err. And many of them will err more than normal. That commitment has to be there. Again, to bet on yourself and to believe in yourself is number one. Okay? ትንሽ ከመጀመራችን በፊት ስለ ኮሎምቢያ ቢዝነስ ስኩል ነግሬሽ ነበር። I always had an itch to go back and learn. Learning is a lifelong endeavor. How do you do it? Read a book. I understand that. I try to do that as much as I can. But ለኔ COVID ሲመጣ in 2020, time stopped. The traveling stopped. The amount of hours lessened. Everything was on video. And so I slept better. And I started asking... Family time was much better. I started asking myself, I need to go back and kind of in a learning place to learn some of the latest, especially on digital strategy, things of that nature. And I was 50 years old when I did that. So if I were to tell my younger self, right, yes, you got an MBA from a great school, you got really good practical experience, but don't forego the opportunity to go back to these higher learning institutions. Mambabu Manamanu is excellent. Read The Economist, whatever your intent is. But at the end of the day, when you have other like-minded people, with the same experience from different industries, with a professor that's facilitating some of the discussion. It's not the content. But that conversation
ከሁሉም ኤክስፒሪየንስ ከሌላ ኢንዱስትሪ በዛ ሌቭል ኤግዜኪቲቭ ሌቭል ሲሆን በጣም ትልቅ ትምህርት አለው። ታዲያ ምንድነው what's next ለምናሴ?
Ellen, very, very important advisory work asarallo. I sit on 2 boards, what would be called independent paid board positions. I do some non-profit work. If the right opportunity shows up, I keep looking for the next gig. What does that next gig look like? At this level of experience, a decision-making role, a C-suite role, in the right place where I get to make decisions. I have my own requirements. It's not the 27-year-old that needed a job at Hewlett-Packard or at Pfizer. So some of the planning to be able to be in this position, some of the experience to be able to be in this position and to be selective is there.
It's a gift, no? It's a gift.
It is a gift. The advisory work is going, and what I always say is, it's amazing. 9 to 5 ساعات سري سووا كفلوش because of what's between your 2 ears. They want your insights. Fantastic that you get invited back, and I'm enjoying that. But I still have the energy and the desire to go back and do something. Just depends on what that right role is.
So opportunity من እንደሆነ ይወስናል ማለት ነው.
So you may see me in a full-time role, but for now it's advising, and I'm an Uber driver to my wife and my kids. ሚስቴ ደግሞ ይህን አንሳ ያንን እንትን በል ስትለኝ መሀንዲስም ሆኜ እሰራለሁ። የሚያስፈልገው ነገር
ለኮሌጅ ትዘጋጃለህ። መጀመሪያ ልጅ ለኮሌጅ ትዘጋጃለህ። ፋንታስቲክ። በጣም መቼስ በጣም ደስ ብሎኛል ምናሴ ካንተ ጋር ይህን ቆይታ ለማድረግ በመቻሌ። ምክንያቱም በአንተ ደረጃ ላይ ደርሰው በዚህ በዌስተርን ኩባንያ ውስጥ ትልልቅ ኩባንያ ውስጥ ኤክስፒሪየንስ ኖሯቸው ትልቅ ኃላፊነት ላይ ደርሰው ብዙውን ጊዜ አንዳንዴ እንደ ስዕል ነው የምናያቸው እዛ ኃላፊነት ላይ ያሉ ሰዎች እና to be able to ካንተ ኤክስፒሪየንስ ይሄ አንደኛ በጣም ስትራቴጂክ የሆነ decisions በማድረግ ነው እዚህ ቦታ የደረስከው በጣም ሲስተማቲክ በሆነ መልኩ ነው እንዳልከው ሚስቴክ አልነገርከኝም ብዙ ግን ግድ የለም ሚስቴክ አለ ብለኸኛል ስለዚህ
አለኝ
ግን እንዳንተ አይነት ቦታ ላይ ሰው ማየት መቻል በጣም ትልቅ ነገር ነውና if I have to leave something behind ብትል maybe ይሄ እንዳልከው might be the opportunity and ሚስቴክ ሰርቼ የሆነ decision አድርጌ ከዚህ እንደዚህ turn around ያረኩበት ምትለውን እድል ልስጥ ይሄ መጨረሻ ጥያቄ
በጣም ጥሩ and maybe as a closing ሁሉን እንተላዋለሁ ይቅርታ አድርጉልኝ አማርኛ እንትን ስላልሆነ ብዙ እንግሊዝኛ አስገብቼበታለሁ that's number one. I thank you very much for giving me this opportunity because I think it's extremely important. What I would say as a closing message, and I'll close with the mistake after that. Listen, there's nothing extraordinary about me at all. Nothing. Even in my own family. I come from what I consider to be intelligent people. The work ethic, the average intelligence, and the drive and the belief, and again, he belief. It's almost like Ellen, there's an IV. Because I saw examples of what good looked like, but this woman was in my ear all the time talking about all these stories about who we are. You understand me? Who we are. This is all I talk about with my kids, who we are. Right? So believe in yourself. Do not let somebody else tell you what you can and cannot be. If I give you a simple example, I always say my cup is 70-80% full with me already. So if it's constructive, more than willing to listen. That's not to say we all don't get bothered by people saying something about us, but the reality is you're going to change me, not a chance in hell. All right? That's the reality. So the mistake, Ellen, I'd say early on in my career, emotional, life is not fair. Decisions are not being made in the right way, and so reactive. Right?
Emotion ማለት አይደለ በቃ ስሜታዊ ውሳኔዎች
ሚቲንግ ውስጥ ቁጭ ብዬ ያው ወኔ አለ ዝም ብዬ ሪአክት አደርጋለሁ and as I got older I started to correct that. Again, there's a time and a place for everything. Not every decision, if I go back to the 70% alignment, 100% commitment, not every decision is my decision. So decision ትክክል ካልሆነ የመናደድ ምናምን እንትን ነበረኝ. And the reality is as you mature, you understand my wife and I don't agree how to raise our kids. We know we love our kids. But exactly, Anchina, no, there's no way. So, Sarabet Gabiche, Hulun Nagaralain and Naragala Malet, it's irrational. Right? So, in this Nagaralain mature Argeno, I got to the point I was getting to. Otherwise, being emotional and being reactive to be totally honest, is not going to allow you to be able to further your career in a corporate setting, for that matter, in your life.
Any setting like.
In your life in general.
መለስ ብሎ ረጋ ባለ መልኩ ነገሮችን መመልከት መቻል ማለት ነው
100%. 100%.
Thank you.
በጣም አመሰግናለሁ።
መልካም መንገድ ወደ ዱባይ።
አመሰግናለሁ።
አመሰግናለሁ ጊዜን ወስደህ ከኛ ጋር ስለቆየ። እንግዲህ ተመልካቾቻችን የዛሬ ፕሮግራም በዚህ ላይ ያበቃል። በሚቀጥለው ሳምንት በሌላ ፕሮግራም እስከምንገናኝ ደህና ቆዩልን።